Alrighty, a quick lesson today. I did a longer lesson yesterday, but didn't record it, and this, kind of rambled quite a bit. So I'll try to make this one shorter and a little more concise and straight to the point. But yesterday we discussed a little bit about creating a trading plan prior to, you know, the next trading session and using context, right? Different forms of context and context from different time frames, essentially, to formulate some ideas and really give context to certain levels and what they really mean. Um, so it looks like I might have a bunch of levels on my chart sometimes, but to me, each of them mean something. Most There are a couple that mean a lot more than others do. I try to make that clear in my outlooks, my daily ones. But for you guys that want to formulate your own ideas and sort of see where my brain's going and follow along, um, it might take a while to for you to get there, but um, only because I use most of the time volume profile and market profile to sort of formulate these ideas. But for a smaller time frame, right, there's a lot of other little things and nuances I do watch. But anyway, right. So essentially, when I say context, we have to start from the higher time frame, first and foremost, right? Um, it's we go day by day, and we get more information each and every day. That sort of guides us towards hopefully the one good idea that we could look to trade in the following session. Um, and I'm not one to really. I don't play both sides. I really only play the long side, but I'm not really one to have only one predetermined plan. Um, I don't like to try to call tops and bottoms. I do like trying to call bottoms, but it's a lot goes into trying to determine what each side, buyers and sellers, what they really want to do, right? So, and we really just go day by day and use the higher time frame for some more context. And then, once we have this daily plan set, it comes down to, okay, what's happening intraday, and again, what's happening intraday sort of guide us into what happens later on in the session, right? And what we want to potentially look for and where are good opportunities to get in trade. So we can go over a couple examples. We'll go over what we did most recently, but we can really go day by day. But so let's just go since it's trend day. This one big trend day on Monday or a couple Mondays ago, right? So we are left with. Let me load up the drawing tool. So we're left with one big trend day here, and kind of thin within. Spent some time trading here, and spent some time trading up at the upper end for the most part. So arguably two distributions, at least two main ones. So what do we look for in the next session, right? Buyers to hold on to the upper end, right? They don't do too good of a job at holding exactly where I wanted it to. I mean, pretty null session, pretty sideways. But for the most part, buyers sort of accomplished their goal of spending time trading, for the most part, above. Um, and buyers really weren't going to get into any kind of trouble unless we started trading below, which we did. You got a little break D period, but only ended up filling these singles in. Buyers weren't really going to be in trouble unless we started trading back into the lower distribution, right? And okay, so let's say going forward into the next couple of sessions, right? So now we have a composite profile, right? Two sessions, and we can see that most of your value is being built here. So as a buyer, what do we want to see hold? Ideally, we want to see this lower end hold, right? Or maybe where the bulk of this stuff comes in, right? You know, if we are to do that and can get to the upper end again, maybe we tease a breakout or we get ready to get long on a breakout. You know, we start failing this and maybe we get some more range bound action within. Once you give it up though, right, you're on your way to your lower distribution here. You do get a little pop off of A period lows, and you know, B and C trades down into this lower end here. And you know, tries to work its way back up, but ultimately ends up giving, right? So, you know, these trades here, I remember, turned into some scalps that we were able to bottom tick. Well, pretty darn close to bottom tick. But they really just ended up turning into scalps because I got stopped out on runners pretty quickly. So now, right, let's say we have another composite. We can just keep building this out because we're in balance. Okay. So now we closed down here, arguably now 2 distributions within this balance, 2 distinct distributions at least. And, right, so what's the goal now? We just pay attention to this upper end, maybe this lower end, right? And see which one we want to trade into. And this session's mostly confined within the lower end here. So, and when I draw these lines, right, we're really looking to, we're paying attention to the extremes because this is where we see responsive activity, right? And we get expected trades. You know, we expect people to buy under value or towards the lower end of value and expect them to sell towards the upper end of value. And when we break out of it, right, you want to see offers, big offers coming in and a lack of bids, right, on pullbacks back up. Okay, so, right. So, and this is just context. We haven't even gotten into sort of like the intraday context yet, but, you know, we come up with trade plans and then, you know, I guess sort of just trade them. And if typically I come up with one trade, one favorite trade, I guess, going into the session. If it doesn't work out, you know, I typically play the rest of the session or trades elsewhere pretty light, and go heavier on, you know, my favorite setup for the day. Now we can get into some intraday context here. You know, let me take this off for now. Right, so this was a good one in terms of using larger time frame stuff and then using intraday context. So, right, this was Friday, I believe, and going into the session we have, wondering, did we have a spike in the previous session? No, we didn't. Kind of just had, so we have to start using this session into context now. Right, so double distribution within this balance, right, with the bulk of it being built here. This session does a really nice job of building value, shifting value a little higher, right? We call it overlapping to higher. Pretty somewhat bullish, right? Because when we have the bulk of the balance sitting here, we expect it to be sideways within. But in this case, was a little different, and we build value for the most part above, right? This is a little shelf here. A couple dips towards the lower end, but then, you know, we end up bidding it. So pretty bullish, right? Because we're able to overlap value to higher. And, you know, let's merge this into this, and right, so now we have this that builds out even more. We have the shelf up there, arguably. And then the upper end here, right? So the plan going into the day, we actually spiked a bit on some news, some pre-market news, and then traded down into these 40s, right, where we got long off of, I believe our entry was 48. And, the idea was to take it up to, if we are to bid this, we're either going to fill this place in, this empty space in, or upon acceptance into here, we'll trade to the upper end. Didn't get the break in continuation, but I'm glad I got out of all my cons at 240. Aside from that, I mean, we accepted shortly up into this range and then went all the way to the upper end as expected. But then you started failing, right? You left a poor high. You started trading back down, and this was a good day, obviously, to be short. Well, we know after the fact now, but with context, we can. I mean, on this move up, I was looking to buy dips, right after on pullbacks down into the 150s, and then 100. We got those little pops off of the dips, but they never really turned into anything substantial. Right, so if we just go to that session again, there are a couple easy ways to just sort of say, okay, buyers are losing control. Right, this was this session here. Right, so we got the moves off of the 40s. Now we traded all the way to the upside. And then you have, so this was your lower end. So it's like 150s to 170s, a place where I was looking for bids to come in if we were to go any higher. Which also lined up with this 1 minute news reaction or candle reaction high. Whenever you have numbers or news that comes out at 5:30, I like to just mark off the highs and lows of that candle. Really, really helpful in trading the following session. So keep that in mind. So I use that for quite a bit of context here, right? And especially when it lines up with something else that I have, from prior sessions, enforces that idea even more. And so the idea here is we want to be long or look to buy dips 150s, right? Or at least that's what I was thinking. Maybe I'm wrong to think that, but I think that's the appropriate idea here. If we don't know if we're going to be selling, right? Is to look for dips into the 150s, 170s, and then you have this news reaction candle high. You pull back to it, get a little bit of a pop, but ultimately end up giving it up, right? And at that point, you kind of have to cut it and say, okay, we're losing the 150s now. We lost that candle high. That's an issue, and I kind of I'd stopped trading after we caught the long. For that specific reason, and we've seen strong bids come off the 70s, and maybe we would have participated again, but so that's where I guess shorter time frame context comes in, right? And sort of helps you shape an opinion or I guess a couple ideas going into the rest of the session. And right, so now that we're failing 150s, what are we looking to do is to go trade back to most recent value starting in the 80s, right? Or we'll just use this profile because this combines everything, right? When we're looking for trade back into the upper end of this profile here, 80s, and just target a couple of the shelves here, or maybe the point of control eventually, and then the lower end ultimately, right? So that's how I go about thinking things throughout the session, and most of it comes from the higher time frame, but intraday things such as this can lead to better ideas and guide you towards I a lot of people say don't try to predict the market, and we're not trying to necessarily predict the market, but we have these different scenarios painted out in our heads of things that could potentially happen, and I have plenty throughout this session, and as we get more candles, it continues to change, right? And I think at least it's very, very helpful in how I trade. Um, right, so sort of just devising a plan and thinking about a course of action depending on certain outcomes. And that's key, right? We don't just get into trade and hope that this one prediction works. Um, we look for good play. Well, we are gonna predict. We look for good places to do it, and we try to use as much information as possible, right? That's given to us. Um, and I've found this to be very helpful, and coming up with a plan every day and sort of providing levels that that just provide context, right? Like going into, let's say, tomorrow, it's a shortened session, but we have a couple of these levels here, right? And we worked into the upper distribution here. Well, we can actually recap today because I think this session is also a good example of context. But this one's more so context from a higher time frame, right? So we had been, so let me go show the trades first. We were long, where was it? This day? No, so we were long off of the 920s and I had some orders down at 905. Didn't catch the whole move, but caught it essentially up to my target. The reason for this 920s long and 905 long, or planned 905 long, right? It all comes down to context. I mean, we have this balance, we have the bulk of value sitting here, right? And this session takes us out of it, so fails the break lower and trades back into it. When you get failed moves to either side, failed moves to the either to any side provide for great moves the opposite direction. And this applies for a lot of things, right? Whether you're talking about a balance on an intraday balance, or you're talking about a larger time frame balance, inside day, inside week, applies to a lot of things. So you fell out of value and failed. So, uber bullish or pretty darn bullish. If there's upside momentum, although we traded back to the upper end of the balance, we left with a spike. That's another level that we can use as confluence. But now, right, we failed this move. Now I'm looking to buy bids, or looking to buy on dips down into the lower end of this, right? And that happens to be in 920s ish and 905. So that was the idea there. And then the plan going into this was, okay, if we can stay above the spike, this prior day spike, I am gonna be uber bullish. And we were. I tried a couple times and then failed with our risk was a little too tight. Um, yeah, I mean, where is 950? Yeah, 950 was like here, it looks like. So I attempted some longs on dips here and dips here, and took one off here overall. Took a loss on the trade. Tried again here. Took another loss on. These were starters, and I had plans to add, like in this case up here. So this one ended up working, and essentially took it up to my targets, right, and just trimmed along the way. And I didn't go into the day expecting for a lot higher, because we traded up to this lower end of this upper distribution up here, right, 150s, and that was my target for being, for the day. Called it a day. And did we miss out on quite a bit? Yeah, about another 100 points, but it is what it is, right? So, like going into tomorrow, we have a shortened session, but action packed with news. And we're now within this upper distribution of this balance, right? We're here and this now. So with this, we watch the lower end where this starts to taper off, and maybe this shelf here is the upper end, which also comes in line with this spike. So yeah, you have another shelf here at 200. Maybe it's just a psych level. You have some singles here, value area high there. So, overall, this 70s area is something we want to hold on to by the least. 70s, 50s. They'd make it easy if we can just bid 240s tomorrow, or above these highs. That'd probably be the easiest play. But, line in the sand, probably last place I look to buy dips. 50s and 70s, right? And, reason being, you start to give this up and then we'll trade down to this point of control, or at least balance down here, or value rather down here. A couple other spots where value starts to kick in, but like this 216 is not too important. If we do find buyers coming in here and we see, sized bids coming in, I wouldn't be afraid to long it. Right? You have half back of this session here. You have a little bit of a shelf there. Is this value area low or a value area high on the current balance? Yeah. Okay, so that's also why I had it. It's also the value area high of this current balance. So it's a lot of context and different things that go into, spotting out a level and sort of giving a role for each one, and then differing levels of importance, right? So that's how I go about, looking at levels and trying to determine which ones are going to be the most important. Where does the bias really flip? And we can be long, look to long on these dips below to like 080 and 116, maybe even the 60. But just know that, we, for the short term, turn somewhat bearish just for the fact of losing this area of value that we've established previously. So like very, very short term, we start losing these 50s and become somewhat bearish, right? Overall picture, not bearish whatsoever. We could use a retest of 60s to 80s. And if we are to find bids there, we will build value above this and just build this out. So, just as a plan tomorrow, I'm not really looking to buy dips below the 60s and 70s. And even then, I'm going to be somewhat light. I would just, especially on a shortened day with a lot of news, I'd rather just look to take the easy trade and just be long over 240s or 270s, right? If I don't get the retest of 240. So it's just different time frames, different, all bunch of different time frames coming together and sort of providing me one picture with, I guess you could say, a couple other pictures within, right? If we're trading intraday. So that's how I go about, or I guess that's how my brain works. We come up with our daily outlook thoughts exactly how we just did here, and then like tomorrow we have news in the morning, so we'll use that 1 minute candle high and low, and if it fits along with or lines up with any of these other ones, it provides that level a little more importance, right? So there's your little lesson on creating a trading plan and having using context from different time frames and whatnot.